Hi guys, good to see you. It's not quite sure why this flower is like a corona. If I do this, would it look any different? No, okay, it's not quite what I had in mind. But anyway, so can you see this quote here? A great fire burns within me, but no one stops to warm themselves at it, and passers-by only see a wisp of smoke. Well, no longer, because someone who is going to stop, and I don't know if they're going to warm themselves, but they're certainly going to see the fire, see Van Gogh's fire, is Paul Gauguin. Paul Gauguin, right at this moment, in terms of the narrative, is in the Yellow House with Van Gogh. And so, what's going to happen? Interestingly, when you Google why did Van Gogh cut off his ear, this is the result that you get. Van Gogh cut off his left ear when tempers flared with Paul Gauguin. It's quite an interesting, um, vague account. He cut off his ear when tempers flared with Paul Gauguin, but another way of saying it is he lost his ear during an argument with Paul Gauguin, right? Anyway, I'll leave it at that. We will obviously come back to that. Um, I'm going to just sort of ramble a bit. I'm going to chat to you guys about ordinary things, but I think we need to make a bit of progress. I've fallen a bit behind. I think this is the second Wednesday I've missed. So we're going to try and jump right in. 28th of October, 1888. Can you believe we're almost at November 1888? After that, there's just one more month in the Yellow House, and then that period of his life is over. Before I continue, just a quick thank you to Taney Vincent. Thank you very much for that. I hope you guys are having a good weekend. Margaret Zabinski, Zircon, Chelsea, Sharon, good to see you here. I wonder if we're going to see Stephanie H. Lynn Lippy, good to see you. Sharon Edwards, good to see you as well. Okay, can we get going? I'm gonna chat to you guys quickly at the end. This isn't going to be a very long episode. You can hear my voice is not doing so great, but we're going to talk a little bit about the movie Oppenheimer. Have you guys watched it? We're going to talk a little bit about thinking about true crime in a connected way, where you try and connect the information, or do you just think randomly? And then some other things, some of them quite humorous. Okay, so let's get going. 20th of October 1888. Remember the letter that predated this one? Theo basically said, please don't worry about money. Please don't overwork yourself. Do you remember that letter? Basically this one, right? He was just saying, he says, I look upon it all as though the question of money, the whole financial side did not exist, but rather existed as a disease, right? He was also saying, you know what, you are so good at making, what does he say? You're so good at making making friends. Where does he say that? Or you're better than me at making friends amongst the artists. Where does he say that? Somewhere here. But anyway, do you remember this letter was basically just saying you you really don't have to worry about the money. Do you remember that? Just trying to find the part where he says, you know, you're so good at networking, basically. Could even have been the previous letter. Anyway, I don't know if you guys remember. I kind of didn't know if I really believed Theo when he said that. He was saying how, you know what, you shouldn't beat yourself up so much. You are really good at basically networking. Just, I don't know. I just really want to find where he says that. Here it is. Okay, you are living like the great ones of the earth and the aristocrats. He says, I beseech you, warn me in time in order that you may not feel that you've been living in misery and that you have fallen ill because you lacked a piece of bread to keep alive. I hope Gauguin's company will be pleasant for you and you will recover within a short time. I can't find the part where he says, you know, you've made friends with the other artists. What does he say? Go on as in the past and create an entourage of artists and friends for us. Oh, there it is. Something which I'm absolutely incapable of doing by myself and which you have been able to do more or less since you came to France. Thanks a lot, Jody. Okay, well, I eventually found it. Okay, so thank you, Margaret. Okay, cool. Let's get going with the next letter. So he says, my dear Theo, about falling ill, I've already told you that I did not think I should, but I'd have fallen ill if my expenditure had continued. So obviously he's talking about financial pressure. For I was terribly uneasy lest I should be forcing you to make an effort beyond your strength. On the one hand, I thought that I could not do better than curry through the thing we had begun when persuading Gauguin to join us. And on the other, as you may know from experience, when one is furnishing or settling down, it is a lot more difficult than one thinks. So this basically confirms a lot of the things we've been saying, that he was under a lot of stress, under a lot of pressure um, to get this place ready for this sort of honored guest, right? He really turned himself inside out. And so the point to really emphasize here is that when Gauguin arrives in Arles, he arrives to a fellow artist who's worn out, who's kind of emotionally exhausted, who's basically just really overwhelmed. And so he finds Van Gogh basically, Van Gogh even says, you know, when he arrived, wow, I thought he was in better condition than I was. He says that over here. He gives me the impression he is even better than me in terms of health, right? And so Gauguin when Gauguin arrives, Vincent is already weakened, is already in a weakened state emotionally, psychologically, physically, right? And in comparison, Gauguin is in a better shape than ever. He's just sold a painting. He is feeling kind of invigorated. Like that alone is making him feeling pretty good. So he goes on to say, now I hope to breathe easily at last, since we have all had a tremendous stroke of luck in your being able to sell a picture for Gauguin. One way or another, all three of us, he and you and I, can pull ourselves together enough to realize what we have done. I guess it's the true crime person in me. There's a part of me that wonders, did Theo really sell that picture? Did Theo really sell this picture at such a crucial time, or is he kind of playing Santa Claus? Who knows? Then he says, "Do not be afraid that I shall be worried about money. Now Gauguin has come. The object is for the moment attained. With the two of us sharing expenses, we shan't spend more for two than has cost one to live alone." Now I don't know about you, but to me that logic just doesn't work. It doesn't seem logical to me to say, remember, Theo's his patron, essentially. doesn't really make sense to say, Theo, now that Gauguin has joined me, you really don't have to worry because now two of us are going to spend as much as it costs for one person. Doesn't really make any sense. If anything, the expenses are going to double. I mean, isn't that the logical thing? The food expenses are going to double. The art supply expenses, aren't they going to increase as well? You know, so it's again, you've got to kind of wonder whether they are playing straight with one another. He can even save money in proportion to his selling. Do you think Gauguin is the kind of guy who's going to want to be thrifty? Who's going to want to eat a piece of bread and drink one cup of coffee every day? He says it will help him, say, in a year to settle in Martinique, which he otherwise could not save enough money for. So can you see Van Gogh has already realized that at most Gauguin is going to be with him for 1 year. And you kind of got the sense before now that he thought it was going to be really long term, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years. Well, now that Gauguin's been there for 2 or 3 days already, he's already figured out, oh, you're going to Martinique after this. You will have my work and also a picture from him every month. And I shall do just as much work without having so much trouble, so many expenses. Even a long time ago, I thought that the combination we have just made would be good policy. The house is getting on very well indeed and is becoming not only comfortable, but an artist's house too. Let's have a quick look at this painting, the Sower. That to me looks like the Abbey of what? Not Martinique. Anyway, the particular abbey near Arles. Again, he's got purple and yellow. That reminds me. Let me ask you guys a question. If you think about the color combinations of baby blue and sort of golden yellow, that is like the classic. That is like the classic Van Gogh combination, blue and yellow, right? Now, if you think about blue and yellow, and you think, what is a cousin to blue and yellow that are derived from the same colors but aren't blue and yellow? What do you think the answer is to that? I actually saw it in my garden recently, and someone else also pointed it out to me. In other words, if you take blue and yellow and you say, well, there's quite a contrast in terms of those two colors, what colors derived from both of those colors are also powerful contrasting colors? See what you guys say. Any thoughts? Any thoughts? %. Well done. 100%. I mean, in my garden, I've got, I think, are they called African violets? African violets, and I think tiger lilies. And they kind of honor, they're hanging in baskets beside a tree. And when you sit down, like have a cup of coffee, and you see the flowers one above the other, you realize, wow, orange and purple is also a really strong combination. Green and orange, that's also quite a good one. Okay, so let's continue. So he goes on to say, I was horribly worried about you, for if Gauguin had not come to the same conclusion about it, I should have caused you pretty heavy expenses for nothing. But Gauguin, and this is quite interesting, we're getting an early assessment from Van Gogh about the kind of dude Gauguin is. He says, Gauguin is astonishing as a man. He does not let himself get out of hand, and he will wait here very quietly, working hard for the right moment to take a great step forward. Do you think that that is true? Thanks a lot, Zircon. Do you think that that is true? Do you think that statement is trustworthy, reliable, honest, accurate? That he, first of all, that Gauguin doesn't let himself get out of hand. Is that true? That he's going to wait here very quietly. Well, first of all, he's going to wait here very quietly, working hard for the right moment to take a great step forward. Do you think those points are correct? I mean, he's just come from somewhere. Gauguin has just come from somewhere where he says, I just can't work. I just not my head's not really in it. My heart's not really in it. I'm not really feeling so great. And then he arrives in Arles, and Van Gogh says, well, you look healthier than I do. So you can see what's going on here is kind of bullshitting, right? Van Gogh is kind of bullshitting his brother. Don't worry, everything's going to be fine. Then he says he needs rest as much as I do. With the money he has just earned, he certainly could have treated himself to a rest cure in Brittany just as well. But as things are now, he's sure of being able to wait without getting fatally into debt once more. This is another crucial point. With the money he just earned, he could have treated himself to what? What is he going to treat himself to? Is he going to rest? Is he going to, what is he going to do? Corin Sanderson, hi from Wisconsin. Good to have you with us. So there is a real sense of Gauguin has just won the jackpot. What is he going to do with that money? Is he going to rest? Is he going to be quiet? Is he going to work hard for like the next payout? What's he going to do? Then he says, together we shall not spend more than 250 francs a month, and we shall spend much less on paint since we are going to make it ourselves. So on your part, don't be uneasy about this, and have a breathing spell too. You need it badly. So this letter seems to be about Vincent. Now that Gauguin is there, he's trying to reassure him. He's saying, send me 250 francs a month, and don't worry about anything else. In fact, you know what? You need to rest. Then he says, wow, thanks a lot, Karen. Thank you so much. Well, that's really kind of you. Really appreciate that. On my part, he says, I just want to tell you that I ask only to go on at an average rate of 150 a month. And the same for Gauguin. So I guess he's talking now about 300. In any case, that reduces my personal expenses, while his pictures are sure to go up. After that, if you keep my pictures for yourself, either in Paris or here, I should so much rather be able to say bluntly that you prefer to keep my work for ourselves and not sell it than join in the scuffle for money just now. I must say, when I was doing this video on the cosmic cultural shift from Massapequa Park to Manhattan, I couldn't help thinking just of the art galleries that I went to in New York. I just thought, the fact that they've got Starry Night and all the paintings that I saw in one art gallery, which is like it's incredible collection in terms of the entire planet Earth. And then not across the road, but literally up the road is another art gallery. That's yet another collection of some of the world's most valuable art, priceless art. And then just down the road, you get to the Guggenheim. So it's the Met, the Museum of Modern Art, and the Guggenheim. And you've got these incredibly precious, valuable artworks from these world famous artists, basically next door to one another. And as someone who's gone to the Van Gogh Museum in Amsterdam, that was quite something. but the sort of the peak achievement in a sense wasn't there. And so you say, well, where is this most famous of all Van Gogh paintings, arguably? It's in New York, right? And all the Gauguins, or a lot of Gauguins, are in New York as well. And so you really get a sense that New York is something special, that New York has got a lot of resources. And it's in that sense that it is this cultural cosmic jump from wherever to somewhere, right? And I'm going to talk about this in a little bit more detail, but when I arrived in New York, it was off the back of a real growth period for my channel. I'd been covering the Murdoch case, and sorry to jump out of the Van Gogh thing, but so when I arrived in New York, I sort of felt like a little bit like I've arrived in a way. It was a little bit of a sense of celebration. And that was kind of how it was meant as well. That's how I was thinking about it. So when I was walking through New York, like at night in Bryant Park, I felt a little bit like Vincent van Gogh, where he makes a breakthrough and then he starts selling his art. I felt a little bit like that. I felt like I'd worked really, really hard and I'd gotten myself to this particular place in the world and place in my life. I didn't like look at New York as a wannabe. Not then. I feel like I'm doing that a little bit now, but it's easy to do that. It's easy to look at New York and kind of go, "This is incredible. I wish I was part of this." And I think that that takes root pretty quickly. I know when I came to New York the second time and I had to leave, there was a bit of a sense of like, I'd like to not only come back here, but wouldn't it be awesome if one could stay here, kind of thing, for any length of time? Not that I'm a city slicker, but spend more time in this incredible landscape, kind of thing. Um, And Van Gogh right now is experiencing a similar sort of vertigo. Suddenly he feels like his life is about to take a turn now that he's with Van Gogh, now that he's with Gauguin. He sort of feels like the studio is now in place, and what could go wrong? That's kind of what he's feeling like, right? And so obviously what's happening is he's got great expectations. He is he thinks is in a fairy tale, and of course things are about to go badly wrong. Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot for that. I've got to say I really love New York as well, and I couldn't help really liking the how it inspires you. It just feels like there's so much um, creativity, big thinking, big heartedness, um, ambition, potential that's unlocked, dreams and resources that come to fruition. It's a place that kind of says this is possible. It's possible to become something, not just something special, but something incredibly implausible in a sense. Again and again and again, you go down one street and you takes your breath away. Next street, next street, next street. You also kind of get the sense that you look up and you see something, and then you sort of feel like there's this incredible cauldron around you and you can never take it all in because there's so much going on. Anyway, I'll kind of come back to talking about that in a moment. So he goes on to say, I should so much rather be able to say bluntly that you prefer to keep my work for ourselves and not sell it than join in the scuffle for money just now. Honestly, Besides, if what I'm doing should be good, then we shall lose nothing in the money line, for it will mature quietly, like wine in the cellar. I don't think that reference is there for nothing. I don't think he's thinking about wine or talking about wine for nothing. I think he's mentioning it because wine is part of what is going on with him and Gauguin already. You know, the mouth overflows with what's in the heart, right? In another way, it is only right that I should take some trouble to make a painting such that even from a financial point of view, it is better that it should be on my canvas than in the tubes. Now, in conclusion, I venture to hope that in 6 months, Gauguin and you and I will all see that we have founded a little studio which will last and which will remain an outpost or a way station, necessary or at least useful to all who want to see the South. And that is not going to happen. The studio is going to not exist at all, not only in 6 months, but within 2 months. So this is his fairy tale, is thinking about the studio that will last and it's not going to last. And the kind of funny thing, I've been thinking about it as well, of having not a studio but a little halfway house, a little office or a little place where if I go to America, I can kind of arrive there, leave my bags, travel, whatever, have a computer, not necessarily a laptop, but a desktop, have some books and files and whatever. Basically, have my little studio somewhere in America. And when I read this, I sort of think, I mean, I've been talking about that to different people, yeah, there, and you know, and I don't think I'm going to do that. At this point, I feel like it's just too, it's going to be too expensive and it's too risky, and I'm just not ready. I think how I'm going to do it instead is go somewhere, stay there for 2 or 3 weeks, and then go there again and maybe stay there for a month, 3 months, and you know, sort of do it like that. Not 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 put down money to rent a place for a whole year and then I'm not even going to be there for 6 months. So I'm just saying there's a little bit of a similarity in his idea and how much it cost him and how devastating it was. And I also have this idea of having a little um, halfway house, if I can call it that. Um, anyway, um, yeah, I know I'm jumping around a little bit, but there was a, I was walking on my treadmill 2 nights ago or last night, not now, last night, and I was watching a video from the like a world champion Ironman competitor, but a female. And she was just saying how in her very first triathlon, she didn't have the right equipment, she didn't know how to eat, she didn't. Or anyway, she was just saying how naive she was, but she was saying it's better to start with secondhand things and cheaply and modestly, and then you build gradually and you fine tune. That is a sustainable way of developing rather than throwing everything into something, right? And I found that really like you look at her and you see she's like a world champion today. You forget that all big things start small, right? So that also made me think about my journey, but also where I am in my journey right now. Okay, let's continue. Um, then he writes this postscript. I do not yet know what Gauguin thinks of my decorations in general. I only know that there are already some studies which he really likes, like the sower, the sunflowers in the bedroom. Really, does he like the sower? And and as for the whole, I do not in the least know myself yet, because I need some more canvases of the other seasons. If you think about this, the decorations he's talking about, was that really essential? Was it really essential that he decorates Gauguin's room? It is creating an archive, and it is creating a collection of artwork, but strictly speaking, I don't know if it was really the right. I mean, 2 months after this, Gauguin would be not even living there. Anyway, he says, I do not know in the least myself yet because I need more canvases. Gauguin has already very nearly found his Elysienne, and I wish I had got that far. But for my part, it is the landscape that comes to me, and I find it varied enough. So after all, my modest work is going on as usual. I venture to think that you will like the new sower, this one. It's I don't know what you guys think. To me, it's just kind of so. I'm writing in haste. We have loads of work to do. He and I intend to make a tour of the brothels pretty often so as to study them. Isn't there quite a ominous ring to that? I'm writing in haste. We've got a lot to do. By the way, we're going to go and go through the brothels, right? Stephanie, good to see you here. You can find a really. Can you find a monthly sublet? Because I did stay for 2 weeks in Airbnb in Boise, and I actually really enjoyed that. I felt like I was really connecting to suburban America. I really did enjoy that. But can you see how quickly, like up here he says, what does he say? Up here he says, um, Gauguin is an astonishing man. He does not let himself get out of hand. We're going to wait here quietly, working hard, blah, blah, blah. And then 1 minute he's saying that, and the next he's saying, we're going to make a tour of the brothels pretty often. He's not just saying, by the way, we're just going to go around to all the brothels right now. He's saying, we both intend to tour the brothels pretty often. And so there you have it in black and white. This is the this is one of the main ingredients for um, the malaise that's to follow. Because not only is syphilis waiting for him in these brothels, I mean, I think he's already got syphilis, but it's going to be triggered and worsened and aggravated. But he's also going to have to deal with all the emotional crap that comes from that. Arguing, getting drunk, arguing while drunk, arguing about women while drunk with another guy that's drunk, all of that kind of thing. Can you see it? Can you see it sort of um, it's not so hard to figure out what's going to happen next. Okay, so next letter, 28th of October 1888. Dear Theo, I think this is one day later, right? No, it's the same day. Thanks for the money order for 50 francs, which I received just now. I knew well that Gauguin has made sea voyages, but I did not know that he was a regular mariner. He has passed through all the difficulties and has been a real able seaman and a true sailor. What do you think that means? Like if we extrapolate that information, what does that mean? Someone who's a regular mariner, what does that mean? Someone who's a true sailor, what do you think that means? It's also someone who does the same thing that sailors do when they get to port. So he's done probably a lot of the rabble rousing that other sailors have done, and he sort of learned it. A scene that comes to mind, just like unsolicited, is in the movie Legends of the Fall, the Brad Pitt character like goes off in search of his fortune, and then somewhere I think he's on a boat, and he's sort of naked, and there's like two or women naked lying over him. You kind of get that sort of sense. You have the same thing with the Voyages of Magellan, at some point the soldiers go on land and they try and find wives for themselves. Although they are there to evangelize, there's a lot of hanky-panky going on as well, right? That's part of the sailor's life. I remember when I don't laugh, but I remember when I studied advertising, we did a campaign for I think it was for the South African Navy, and somebody joked, "Fresh seamen wanted." It's like a bit of a play on words, if you know what I'm saying. Fresh seamen wanted. Anyway, so so it says here, this gives me an awful respect for him. Yeah, well said. So that's exactly what's happening. Is he's now going to meet all the sirens of all with Gauguin as his guide, right? He says, this gives me an awful respect for him and a still more absolute confidence in his personality. So you know what is happening here is he's being led by the hand. Um, can't help thinking in true crime allegories. I was going to talk about Perugia, but it's like someone it's a little bit like Pinocchio going somewhere, and Van Gogh in this sense is Pinocchio, and he meets the fox who introduces him to. Well, I'm not sure if it was the fox in all versions, but certainly in the cartoon version, the fox sells him to a um, a trafficker, and then he ends up becoming like a donkey on his way to Pleasureland. You kind of get the feeling that Gauguin is leading Van Gogh into Pleasureland, and Van Gogh's going to come out of it a donkey if he's not careful. Except the only difference is instead of growing long ears, he's going to lose his ear, right? So he goes on to say he has, if one must compare him with anything, an affinity with the Icelandic fisherman by Loti. I think this will make the same impression on you as on me. Now we have already worked, of course. He is busy with a negress and a large landscape of this region. Why do you think Gauguin is sitting in awe but painting, I think, Polynesians? It's because he's already had experiences with them and he's sort of pining for those experiences again, right? Anyway, so he says, what he tells me about Brittany is very interesting, and Ponthaven is a most marvelous country. Certainly, everything there is better, larger, more beautiful than here. Well, that's not very good news. So, Gauguin has left Brittany to go somewhere where, by his own words, he's saying things are better there, larger, and more beautiful than here. Well, that doesn't bode well for how long Gauguin is going to stay in awe, does it? It has a more solemn character and especially purer in its totality and more definite than the shriveled, scorched, trivial scenery of Provence. You kind of get a weird sense that wow, one minute Van Gogh was a fan of all, he was saying how great it is, and suddenly he's so enthralled by Gauguin that he just sort of is following him like a puppy in a way, like a lapdog. Never mind, all the same, he, as myself, likes what he sees, and above all things, he is intrigued by the Arlesians. I'm not surprised. You kind of get the feeling the only thing Gauguin is interested in all are the brothels and the women in them, right? This week I made a new study of a sower, the landscape quite flat, the figures small and vague. I don't think that is particularly good. Further, I've made another study of a plowed field with the stump of an old yew tree. It's pretty gray, right? If you think about it, it's quite muted tones for what we are used to from Van Gogh at this point. Look at the yellow sky. Let's see if we can get a better version of that picture. I'm just wondering whether the coloring is um, not right. Seems like it's the right coloring. Here's another version of that. Trunk of an Old Yew Tree by Vincent van Gogh. I must say, I quite like it. I think it's quite like the picture. Very yellow, but otherwise can't say I've ever seen this picture before. I do quite like it. And he says, and that's all. Do you notice how his letters are getting shorter and shorter? He says, how are you? Have you done anything in Brussels? My brain is still feeling tired and dried up, but this week I'm feeling better than the previous fortnight. What Gauguin tells of the tropics seems marvelous to me. So you can still tell that he's really captivated by Gauguin. Gauguin has lived a life. Gauguin has had adventures. Gauguin, has lots of experiences with other people and other places and other women. And Van Gogh feels very poor next to him. And in a way, I guess, inadequate. He says, surely the future of the great Renaissance in painting lies there. Just ask your new Dutch friends whether they ever thought how interesting it would be if some Dutch painters were to found a colorist school in Java. If they heard Gauguin describe the tropical countries, it would certainly make them desire to do it directly. Everybody is not free and in circumstances that allow them to emigrate, but what things could be done there? I regret I'm not 10 or 20 years younger, then I would certainly go there. Now it is most unlikely that I shall leave the shore and put to sea, and the little yellow house here in All will remain a way station between Africa, the tropics, and the people of the north. So he's also thinking about it as a kind of halfway house for artists that are traveling around the world, in their case, in ships. At present, it is rather probable that Bernard will go to Africa and he will meet Millier, who gives you his regards and will leave on November 1. Millier is not Millet. He's a soldier that seemed to have a lot of success with the ladies, and Van Gogh had painted his portrait a couple of times. You may remember. I like the look of the studio, especially in the evening with the gas burning. If you should come across more Dumiers, don't forget to grab hold of them. And I think that in the evening we will bring along neighbors and friends. And while chatting away, we will work in the evening as in the daytime. Well, when he says in the evening we will bring along neighbors and friends, what do you think he's also going to bring home? So he's starting to think about the Yellow House as a place for socializing, a place for partying, a place for revelry, right? Portraits of people in the light of a gas lamp, it certainly seems to me it can be done. I shake your hand well and write to us soon. Ever yours, Vincent. Okay, and now this is really an interesting letter, 2nd of November, and that's when this famous um, contest occurs between these two artists, where they both go to Les Ali Champs and they paint the same scene. Dear Comrade Bernard, we have worked a lot these days, and in the meantime, I've read Les Rêves by Zola, and because of this, I've hardly any time to write. So, do you notice these letters are becoming a lot shorter, and they're also becoming fewer, which is why we already in November, when we're going to be able to go through November really quickly. Gauguin interests me very much as a man, very much. It's the second time he said that. For a long time now, it has seemed to me that in our nasty profession of painting, we are most sorely in need of men with the hands and the stomachs of workmen, more natural taste, more loving and more charitable temperaments than the decadent dandies of the Perusian boulevards that should be that the dandies of the Parisian boulevards have. Well, here we are without the slightest doubt in the presence of a virgin creature with savage instincts. What do you think he means by that? Thanks a lot, Jules. What do you think he means by, wow, we are in the presence of a creature with savage instincts? What do you think he means? I think he means he's already seen Gauguin in action, uh, um, in like a, what's that word? Is it bawdry? I think that's the word.
Bawdry.
No, it's yeah. But what I'm trying to get at is Gauguin is seeing Gauguin in action, getting involved in brawls and drunk, and his appetite for revelry, for womanizing, for violence, for trouble, basically. And can you see just those words? We are in the presence of a creature with savage instincts. Like, he's not just saying that, those aren't just words. That comes from A Night on the Town with Gauguin, a guy who provokes someone, spoils someone's drink, and then pushes them around. Someone who grabs a woman and maybe kisses her, or grabs her and says, "You come and sit at my table no matter what she's busy with." There he says, with Gauguin, blood and sex prevail over ambition, right? Reckless for sure. So, do you think that that is a good sign that Gauguin is? I mean, in the previous letter, he's been saying the opposite. He says that don't worry, Gauguin is an astonishing guy because he's. Sorry, it's the letter even before that one. That's how quickly we're going through it. He says Gauguin is an astonishing guy because um, he's such a quiet guy. He's going to work hard. Is it over here? No, it's not. Why can't I find it? He does not let himself get out of hand. Well, not. He will wait here very quietly, really, working hard in the brothels, I guess. So can you see things are changing very quickly for Van Gogh? Look at the words he uses: savage instincts, blood and sex, right? And doesn't he mean literally 1 minute Gauguin is hitting someone, you know, drawing blood, you know, breaking their nose or whatever, because that is what he is. He's a boxer, he's a pugilist, right? And then the next thing is having sex. 1 minute there's blood in a bar, and the next minute there's sex in the yellow house, kind of thing. And he's saying these things prevail over ambition. That he's more interested in barroom brawls and finding sex in a brothel than painting. I mean, is that what he's saying? Isn't that what he's saying? Like the drunken sailor. So it's not rocket science what's going on. We were saying, isn't Gauguin going to be a bad influence? Isn't Gauguin, maybe in a way you could say, is a good influence? He's allowing Vincent van Gogh to experience life in a very raw sense. But in another sense, when we say, why did Van Gogh cut off his ear? Well, because he's in the company of a dude with savage instincts. Does he really cut off his ear because he's so frustrated in the company of this guy, or does he lose his ear for another reason? Right? So he goes on to say, but enough, you have seen him at close range for a longer time than I have. I only wanted to tell you in a few words what my first impressions are. These are his first impressions. A savage where blood and sex prevail over ambition. And isn't that blood eventually going to be his own blood, the blood from his ear? Aren't they going to argue? Aren't Vincent and Gauguin going to argue over sex, over a woman? Maybe they both like, or maybe Van Gogh doesn't want her brought to the Yellow House yet again. I actually can't imagine him not liking that. Then anyway, he says, you will be greatly amazed if I tell you that our discussions tend to treat of the terrible subject of an association of certain painters. This association must or may have, yes or no, a commercial character. We haven't arrived at any conclusion yet, nor have we set foot on a new continent. So, yeah, he's talking about our discussions on, he talks about the terrible subject of an association of certain painters. As for me, with my presentation of a new world, I firmly believe in the possibility of an immense renaissance of art. Whoever believes in this new art will have the tropics for a home. I have the impression that we ourselves serve as no more than intermediaries, and that only the next generation will succeed in living in peace. Apart from all this, our duties and the possibilities of action for us can become clearer to us only by experience and nothing else. Well, that's him singing a new tune. He's basically saying, we need to experience things. Where do you think that idea is coming from? I'm a bit surprised at the fact that I've not yet received the studies you promised me in exchange for mine. Now, something that will interest you. We have made some excursions to the brothels, and it is probable that in the end we shall often go and work there. That's the second reference to that in two letters. And then he talks about brothels again in the next line. So you can see the impact of Gauguin on Van Gogh in all is immediate. He arrives and they go to brothels. It's kind of what you would expect. It's kind of something you'd anticipate, and that's exactly what does happen. Okay. At the moment, Gauguin is working on a canvas of the same night cafe I painted too, but with figures seen in the brothels. It promises to turn out beautiful. I myself have done 2 studies of the fall of leaves in an avenue of poplars, and a 3rd study of this whole avenue entirely yellow. Just have a look at them. Can you see how he's influenced by Gauguin? That actually looks like a Gauguin. That doesn't look like Van Gogh at all, right? It's got like a little bit of a cartoonish feel about it. Although I don't particularly think the figures he's drawn here are done very well. And then there's the avenue of poplars as well. Can you see Van Gogh is exploring a very cerebral style. And again, I don't think he gets the figures very well. That's almost faceless. Look at that. It's almost a faceless figure and another faceless figure. And then there's this one. And again, this third picture, this is the third picture in a row that has the feeling, the vibe of Gauguin's art. You kind of get the feeling that over the course of 3 paintings, Van Gogh has just lost his style completely. Almost that Gauguin said, "Hey, paint like this," and so he's done that. And again, I quite like this picture, but why are these figures drawn so pathetically? Again, two faceless figures. No effort whatsoever to put a face in the space of the face, right? So let's go through them again. I mean, compare this picture, which I don't really like. I don't think it's one of his best, but I do like it for its what's the word, for the intensity of it. I quite like that. That speaks to the Van Gogh we know, but there's none of that intensity here. What's he trying to say with this picture? There's none of that intensity here. There's none of that intensity here. Well, there's a little bit of it. There's something here, something going on here. Okay, so then he says, as for me, with my presentiment of a new world, I firm. Okay, I've read that. Okay, he says, I cannot understand why I don't do studies after the figure, seeing that it is often so difficult for me to imagine the painting of the future theoretically, as otherwise than a new succession of powerful, simple portraitists, comprehensible to the general public. Well, perhaps I shall go to the brothels before long. I leave a page open for Gauguin, who will probably write to you too, and I heartily shake your hand in thought. So, how many references in this one letter are there to brothels? 1, 2, 3, and indirectly, there's this reference to sex and blood and a virgin creature with savage instincts, right? So you can tell what is going on in his life. Thanks a lot, Deborah. Thank you. You can tell what a immediate influence um, Gauguin is having on Vincent, not only on his art and kind of his state of mind, another short letter, but also on what he's doing every day. You know, one day he was buying furniture and being kind of a fixer-upper and drinking 23 cups of coffee. Now he's doing something else and he's drinking something else, right? Okay, 6th of November. So before we deal with this picture from the 6th of November, what is actually going on here, as much as Gauguin is a destructive force, he's also an incredibly stimulating force for Van Gogh. Van Gogh is being challenged, tested, undermined, criticized, praised, but basically triggered in all sorts of different ways that is helping him to expand and grow and improve as an artist, right? And it's and to Gauguin's credit, you might say whatever you want to say about him. To Gauguin's credit, it's shortly after his arrival that Van Gogh produces this picture, which I don't think you can argue with, is one of his most beautiful paintings of all of his paintings. There's a lot of effort in it, a lot of detail in it, and it's no wonder that this picture sold. And so, shortly after Gauguin's arrival, it literally is like the Midas touch. Vincent produces a painting which ultimately is sold, and one wonders how much input did Gauguin have on this picture. Did he say, "Jeepers, dude, slow down. Instead of spending 2 hours on a painting or half a day, spend 3 days on it"? Think about it for a little bit longer. I know you want to do this with perspective, but why don't you put more people into your pictures? And if you ask me, a lot of Gauguin's paintings have got several figures in them. They seem populated, right? And isn't this one of the first times you see so many people? It's not just one person in a wagon crossing a bridge. It's not one person in a lane of poplars going down the road. It's a whole group of people in the field at the same time. There's something festive about it. And where does that come from? Does that come out of Van Gogh's loneliness, or does it come out of this period, this brief as it was, this period of celebration, right? Does that make sense? Do you guys agree with that? That it is, in a way, thanks to Gauguin's presence and thanks to um, the inspiring aspect to it. There's a positive aspect and a negative, but it's thanks to the positive aspect that Van Gogh is able to produce this picture. Let's hear what he says about it. Let's hear what he says. My dear Theo, now bear in mind quite a bit of time has passed. Sometimes he writes 2 letters on a day. Now 4 days have gone by, from the 2nd of November to the 6th of November, and from the 6th of November to the 12th of November. And you see Gauguin's having he's getting his hooks into Van Gogh. He's starting to have a greater and greater and greater influence on him, a greater and greater sway on Vincent's psychology, right? Right, so he says here, my dear Theo, Gauguin and I thank you very much for the 100 francs you sent and also for your letter. Gauguin is very pleased that you like what he sent from Brittany and that other people who have seen them like them too. Just now he has in hand some woman in a vineyard, although from memory, but if he does not spoil it or leave it unfinished, it will be very fine and very unusual. So can you see, just in that sentence, he's talking about Gauguin recognizing a bunch of women, several women in a vineyard that are likely picking grapes, right? And the next thing he paints, are there women in this vineyard? Are these women in a vineyard? Is that a woman right there in the front? How about that one? How about over there? I mean, you could put it another way. How many of these people in the vineyard aren't women? And there are more figures there in the distance. I mean, that is certainly not a woman sitting on the wagon, but it feels like almost everyone else is. And so, isn't that what he's referring to here? Right now, Gauguin has in hand some woman in a vineyard and he's painting it from memory. If he does not spoil it, it'll be a very fine picture. Also, a picture of the same night cafe that I painted too. I've done 2 canvases of falling leaves, which Gauguin liked, I think, and I'm working on now a vineyard of all purple and yellow. There it is, purple and yellow, purple and orange, I suppose you could say as well. And so in one paragraph, he talks about Gauguin doing that, and in the very next one he's doing something similar. So I think you can very much make the case that Gauguin had a really also immediate impact on Vincent van Gogh in terms of this particular picture, which is the only picture he sold in his lifetime. That is pretty incredible. That is like, wow, the Midas touch, incredible, right? I agree. I also think it's quite amazing. Okay, so then he says, then I have an Elysian at last, a figure slashed on in an hour, background pale lemon, the face grey, the clothes black, deep black with unmixed Prussian blue. She's leaning on a green table and seated in an armchair of orange wood. And there's definitely a hint of the portrait of Dr. Gachet here, right? Um, the face, sorry, the hand pressed against the cheek, the flower, I think that's a flower, in front of her, unless those are gloves, but kind of looks like a flower to me. Let me bring it up just to make it explicit. And even quite a lot of the colors are the same: deep blue, kind of a lime green, right? And an elbow on the table. And what else? And in Dr. Gachet's case, there's a flower over there. You can see is improved between this picture and that one. There's a lot more detail. There is again a Gauguin influence on this picture. You can see it's a lot flatter. There's a lot less detail. But there you go. One also wonders, is this a chair inside the yellow house? Anyway, let's go back to his description. He says, she's leaning on a green table and seated in an armchair of orange wood. And so one also wonders, is she a prostitute? Was she brought into the house by Gauguin or by Van Gogh or by both of them, or how did she end up in the house? But you kind of get the feeling Van Gogh hasn't been able to execute a picture like this in weeks, if not months. So again, it feels like, wasn't that Gauguin's influence, right? Then he says, Gauguin has bought a chest of drawers for the house and various household utensils, also 20 meters of very strong canvas, and a lot of things that we needed, and that at any rate it was more convenient to have. Only we have kept an account of all he has paid out, which comes to almost 100 francs. So what this tells you, Gauguin buying a chest of drawers um, and utensils, you kind of get the idea that to some extent, Gauguin is investing in this project. At this point, certainly, they are both getting along. They're brothers in arms, brothers in brothels, kind of thing, right? Things are, during the first week, things are going fairly well. They are both quite productive in a sense. Then he says, it came to about 100 francs, so that either at the New Year or say in March, we can pay him back, and then the chest of drawers, etc., will naturally be ours. I think this is right in the whole, since he intends to put money by when he sells till the time when he has enough to risk a second voyage to Martinique. So you can see that is really where he wants to go. He already wants to be somewhere else. We are working very hard and our life together goes very well. So far, so good. It's been a good first week. I'm very glad to know that you are not alone in the flat. These drawings by De Haan are very fine. I like them very much. Yet to do that with color, to manage so much expression without the help of chiaroscuro in black and white, damn it all, it is not easy. Oh, are you saying that they could be gloves? I suppose they could be gloves, but what's the long? Yeah, you're right. It could be an umbrella. Actually, that does make sense. That looks like it could be um, a red umbrella or a parasol. Yeah, that does look. Those do look like gloves. Shows you Van Gogh's not such a good artist where you can say that's definitely a flower. But yeah, that now I feel a little bit silly because that is obviously umbrella and a glove. Oh, hang on. It says so there, doesn't it? It says so there. If it's Madame Genu, then I don't know if she's a prostitute. She may be. Who is Madame Genu? Let me just see if I can find that out. She somehow looks quite respectable. So this is the Wikipedia page. This is Gauguin's version of her, and you can see that is in the night cafe, right? And I don't know about you, but I think this is a much better picture than Van Gogh's by like a country mile. I mean, look at the cat under the table. Just look at the detail. He even includes the smoke. And unlike Van Gogh, he doesn't paint a circle with nothing in it. I mean, that's as close as he comes to doing that. He does put some effort into his faces and his figures. Um, I shouldn't actually have closed that. There's something else I wanted to look at. Let's just do that again. Apparently, this is another version of that picture, and it apparently is at the Met in New York. Um, but this is one with books on the table, parasol and gloves. There you have it. Okay, so going back to this picture, this is a sketch that Gauguin did. Not terribly good. That's something that we did in December in the Colosseum. Again, it's got a bit of a see all the people. You don't often see Van Gogh drawing so many people or painting so many people. It's again got the influence of Gauguin there. Again, if you look at this picture, it's got a lot of people in it, right? So main difference between Gauguin and Van Gogh in terms of their pictures in general. Here are a couple of other versions that he did of her. Again, books on the table. Books on the table. Again, elbow on table, um, fist against the cheek. That there's another version of it. So this was his first execution of this particular picture, and you can see how many times he repeats it. Anyway, I thought that was just worth going into in a bit more detail. Okay, shall I bring myself back? So he says, where were we? I'm very anxious someday to get to know De Haan and Isaacson. If they ever came here, Gauguin would certainly say to them, go to Java for Impressionist work. Gauguin works hard here. He's still homesick for hot countries. So there you have it. He's already communicating that he'd rather be somewhere else. And he says, then it is questionable that if you went to Java, for instance, with the idea of working on color, you'd see heaps of new things. Then in those brighter countries with a stronger sun, direct shadow, as well as the cast shadow of objects and figures, becomes quite different, and is so full of color that one is tempted to simply to suppress it. That happens even here. In any case, to come here sometime or other would do them no harm. They would certainly find some interesting things. You notice how quickly we go through his letters now, because his letters have become a lot shorter. Gauguin and I are going to have our dinner at home today, and we feel as sure and certain that it will turn out well as that it will seem to us better or cheaper. So as not to delay this letter, I will finish up for today. I hope to write again soon. Your arrangement about money is quite right. You know, when he says we're going to have dinner at home today, you kind of get the feeling they haven't had dinner at home for a while, right? I think you will like the fall of the leaves that I've done. It is some popular trunks in lilac cut by the frame where the leaves begin. And then he talks about the tree trunks are lined like pillars along an avenue where to the right and left there are rows of old Roman tombs of blue lilac. Yeah. So these are Roman tombs, these things on the side here. I've walked down that avenue. I've also taken photos. I wonder if I can find them. In the avenue, little black figures of lovers. The second canvas is the same avenue, but with an old fellow and a woman as fat and round as a ball. But if you had been with us on Sunday when we saw a red vineyard, all red like red wine, I must say this kind of gives me gives me sort of goose pimples, because here he's talking about this incredible moment where he made a breakthrough. He says, if only you'd been with us on Sunday when we saw a red vineyard, all red like red wine. In the distance, it turned to yellow, and then a green sky with the sun. The earth after the rain, violet, sparkling yellow here and there, where it caught the reflection of the setting sun. It obviously was a magical scene beyond the fact that he was painting it. It was a really magical moment in the south of France. It was the end of the very end of summer, this autumn scene. You can probably smell those grapes. I know when you travel to Cape Town, you go to the Hex River Valley. At a certain time of the year, you see bright yellow squares of the vineyards. Some are bright yellow, some are bright red, some are dark red, and it just is incredibly picturesque. Really is quite beautiful. A vineyard in autumn can be absolutely beautiful. And so he says, um, it was red like red wine. Anyway, he says, a handshake in thought from both of us. Goodbye for the present. I'll write again as soon as I can, and to our Dutchman too. Okay. Oh, there we go. The madam runs the cafe. Okay. I think we're going to stop on this letter. I'm not going to go further than that because, as you've noticed, we've gone very, very quickly through November. So we almost halfway through November, and the next letter is the 13th, but it's a short one. It's a letter from Theo to Paul Gauguin. And after that, we are past halfway through November. Let's just have a quick look at these pictures of, well, I must say, I thought that was a Gauguin, but it's a Gauguin-inspired picture painted by Vincent. That also I thought was a Gauguin, but it's once again not a very nice picture, but inspired by Gauguin. Okay, anyway, we'll deal with those letters in the next episode. So last letter, 12th of November 1888. My dear Theo, I've received a letter from MC Dujardin on the subject of the exhibition of my pictures in his black hole. I can't believe I'm reading that. I'm so disgusted, I think that should be an S, at the idea of handing over canvas in payment for the proposed exhibition that really there's only one possible answer to the gentleman's letter, the one you will find enclosed. I'm sending it to you and not to him so that you may know what I think and that you may simply tell him that I've changed my mind and at the moment have no desire to exhibit. So it's quite strange that he is actually invited to exhibit at this person, and he's too good for it. He says he's disgusted at the idea. He's suddenly a bit of a snob, isn't he? He says, getting angry with a scoundrel doesn't do the slightest bit of good. It is better to be conventionally polite. So no exhibition at the Revue Independente. I boldly venture to think that Gauguin is also of this opinion. In any case, he's making no attempt to persuade me to do it. You kind of get the feeling that, I mean, all things being equal, if you imagine that Gauguin had never come down to Arles, right? I suppose you could say, would the Red Vineyard have existed then? Maybe it would have. But if Gauguin had never come down to Arles, wouldn't Van Gogh have been hard up enough to have taken up this offer? Maybe he wouldn't have anyway. But you kind of wonder if Gauguin hadn't come down, perhaps Van Gogh would have gone up and held an exhibition, and maybe he would have had a breakthrough anyway. Just does make you wonder. He says, we have hardly exhibited, have we? There have been a few canvases, first at Tanguy's, afterwards at Thomas's, and then at Martin's. Now, as for myself, I tell you flatly that I can see no use even in that. And it really seems to me much better if you simply keep the studies you like in your apartment and send the others back here rolled up, since the apartment is small. And if you kept everything, they would crowd it up. So it seems like he's kind of asking his brother to send his art that he sent to his brother back to him. How is that for very colloquial language? He says, but as for the Revue Independente, please tell them curtly it's a no-go. I just want to see if there's any talk about this. Why was he against it? I can't really see. There are a couple of references to it, but I can't really see anything worthwhile. Anyway, he says, it's too good an opportunity, and you will feel that they are greatly mistaken if they think I'm going to pay for being put on view in such a dark, suspect little hole as that. And so instead of going to that hole, he's spending his time going to brothels, right? Now, as to showing a few canvases at Tanguy's and Thomas's, it's a matter of such indifference to me that it isn't worth talking about. But above all, remember that I simply don't care. I already know what I shall do the moment I have enough canvases. Right now, I'm only concerned with making them. What will please you is that Gauguin has finished his canvas of the woman grape gatherers. It is as beautiful as the negresses. Let's see if we can find it. If it's called that, Paul Gauguin. I can't find anything like that unless it's this one. Oh, here it is. So just have a look at this Google page where you see just at a glance just how peopled Gauguin's art is. In this picture, 4 people are in it. In this one, 3 people, 2. But the figures dominate the landscape rather than the other way around. You see what I mean? You kind of get the idea that Gauguin is not only a lot more socialized than Vincent, but also a lot more social. Look at all the people in his pictures. Whereas with Van Gogh, often you have a picture that doesn't have anyone in it. It's a picture of a chair, a picture of a tree stump, a picture of a garden, a picture of a field, a picture of trees. And with Gauguin, it always seems to be people in them, and people fairly up close, right? And a lot of the people in his pictures are um, not Europeans. They seem to be um, Tahitians, or as Van Gogh calls them, negresses. But anyway, here is the one he's talking about, Grape Harvest at Arles. That's this one. I don't know why it looks so strange. This person seems to have a um, green face. And if you think about it, how different, I'm not sure what's going on here, how different are the executions of the Red Vineyard in terms of this picture? I mean, what do you guys think? In a contest between Gauguin and Vincent van Gogh for this particular picture, which one do you think wins the prize? Which picture would you rather have, this picture or this picture? Which one is better executed? Who does better? I know what I think. Okay, so he says he calls it as beautiful as the negresses. Is it? Um, if he says, and if you paid, say, the same price, it would be well worth it. But of course, you have the lot to choose from, and I've not seen the Breton things. He has described several to me, and they must be fine. The Breton picture is this one, which I think is really good. I quite like that one. Anyway, then he says, I've done a rough sketch of the brothel. Although, haven't we seen that before? And I quite intend to do a brothel picture. Gauguin came here on October 20th, so we must figure that he had 50 francs from you last month. Yes, I think there must be a clear understanding about the exhibition of my work. You are with the Goupils. You have no right to do business outside the firm. I myself, being away, do not exhibit. I repeat, it is another matter at Tanguy's, provided Tanguy fully understands that he has no right to my canvases whatever. So I don't know about you, but don't you kind of get the sense that Van Gogh has also become a bit of an arsehole just like that? He's not the sweet, kind, sensitive, thoughtful guy. He's suddenly become quite a prickly pear, right? Then my position is at least clear, which is not altogether immaterial to me. With a little more work behind me, I shall have enough not to have to exhibit at all. That is what I'm aiming at. Don't know why he doesn't want to exhibit. I too have finished a canvas of a vineyard, all purple and yellow, with small blue and violet figures and a yellow sun. Another reference to the red vineyard. I think that you will be able to put this canvas beside some of Monticelli's landscapes. I'm going to set myself to work from memory often, and the canvases from memory are always less awkward and have a more artistic look than studies from nature, especially when one works in mistral weather. Where do you think that comes from? Where do you think that idea comes from? He's talking about now I'm going to work from memory more often. Well, that is what Gauguin does. Gauguin's pictures are cerebral, they are products of the mind and imagination. Van Gogh's work is far more kind of what you see is what you get, what he sees in front of him, right? And so this is again Van Gogh basically being instructed by Gauguin and Van Gogh going, okay, I'll do that. I'll draw from memory. I'm not going to go out. But guess what? He finds that that's not who he is, and that's not going to work for him. He says, I think I haven't yet told you that Méliès has gone to Africa. He got a painting of mine for troubling to take the canvases to Paris. And Gauguin gave him a small drawing in exchange for an illustrated edition of Madame Chrysantheme. I've not yet decided I've not yet received the exchanges from Ponthoven, but Gauguin assures me that the canvases were finished. We are having wind and rain here, and I'm very glad not to be alone. I work from memory on bad days, and that would not do if I were alone. So, at the very least, he's not lonely. At the very least, having Gauguin, whatever Gauguin's preferences, whatever his personality, whatever his predilections, Van Gogh is happy. Is not lonely anymore. And of course, he's going to be extremely lonely following this period, extremely broken as well. Gauguin has almost finished his night cafe. He is very interesting as a friend, and I must tell you that he knows how to cook perfectly. I think I shall learn from him. It is very convenient. We find it very easy to make frames with plain strips of wood nailed on the stretcher and painted, and I've begun doing this. So certainly from Vincent van Gogh's perspective, he's very happy with the arrangement. And I must say, again, I think his night cafe is really well done. It's not like he arrives there and sits on his ass and doesn't do anything. He does execute quite a good painting. And then he says he's very interesting as a friend. He's a good cook. And so he's enjoying having this guy in his company. Do you know that Gauguin is really partly the inventor of the white frame, but the frame of 4 strips nailed on the stretcher costs 5 sous, and we are certainly going to perfect it. It is very well because the frame has no projection and is one with the picture. Not quite sure what he means by that, the inventor of the white frame. Does he mean that goodbye for now, a handshake for you, and my compliments to the Dutchman. Ever yours, Vincent. Gauguin sends his greetings, asks you to keep out of the price of the first picture you sell the amount necessary for the stretchers with screws that he wants, and also what Bernard will be asking you for a commission he gave him. So you kind of get the feeling of a domestic situation where Gauguin may be painting and then cooking, and Van Gogh is writing a letter, and Gauguin is very aware that the one brother is writing to the other brother constantly and getting money from him. Okay, and so that's as far as we're gonna take it. Are you guys finding this interesting? Are you guys learning a bit more than you knew previously? So is there anyone here who saw the movie Oppenheimer? Anyone here saw Oppenheimer? If so, if you haven't seen it, I'm not sure if I want to give away any spoilers. I watched it, I think 2 nights ago. So what did you think? What did you think about it? That's good to hear, Jody. Thanks for that. Sharon says not yet. Stephanie, you haven't seen it. Oh, IMAX should be. I don't know. There's a aspect to the movie that is very kind of dull, and I say that as a huge fan um, of Christopher Nolan. I know what he's capable of. I've seen Memento. I've seen Tenet. I've seen The Dark Knight. I've seen the war movie. What was it called? Dunkirk. Um, yeah, but so I'm just gonna share some of what I think. I'm waiting for Chelsea. Chelsea, you haven't seen it yet. So I'm just going to share some of my thoughts. I thought one of the most powerful things in the movie would be the explosion rendered by Christopher Nolan. In other words, Christopher Nolan um, giving you a gritty sense of um, of an atom bomb explosion, right? The power, the destructive power of an atom bomb. And although he does it in quite an artistic and cerebral way, he doesn't do it in the way that I thought he was going to do it. In other words, I thought you're going to feel the earth shake. You're going to feel the bright white power. You're going to feel that white heat. You're going to see it so clearly that you're almost going to feel it on your forearm. And when I was in Hout Bay, I was in on my grandmother's balcony, and at that stage, squatters were starting to sort of inhabit the forest areas around her property. The excuse me, the sort of dune area and and at one point, I think it was the day after Christmas, a candle or something caught fire in these shacks that were sort of hidden between the trees. And I don't know, I firsthand witnessed something that was really horrible. I witnessed, every now and then a gas can would explode and would shoot up into the air like fireworks, but obviously it's not fireworks, it's someone's home. And you could actually feel the light would go up, but you could actually feel the heat on your skin, and it was, just was some distance away. And I didn't get a sense of that from what he did. I thought he did quite a good job, but I thought it's not it's Nolan, a little bit off of his game. I also I read an article and I thought, you're right, it doesn't show anyone from Japan. It doesn't show any of the victims. And I think if I had made the movie, I would have wanted to almost like walk through, Hiroshima during the explosion. So I thought it felt a bit more like a Terminator movie, Terminator 2, the beginning of it, than than that aspect. It felt very, it felt like it went on for an hour after it felt like it made his point. There's a long thing that had to do with an investigation where you just see figures in a room talking, and yeah, I will say, and I'm not going to give away what happened here. I will say that the very last scene in the movie is probably the most powerful. I thought that was done very well. Oh, thanks a lot, Helena. I also couldn't help feeling when I walked out of that movie that this is the absolute right movie for right now, given what's going on in Ukraine. Um, it's possible that, we need to be reminded what an atomic weapon is, and this is the perfectly right movie to do that. It's the right movie and the right story. Whether he executed it is another story, is another question. Yeah, I mean, I think that it isn't his best. Um, Stephanie, have you ever met Christopher Nolan? Ever met him? I just wonder. Okay. What's the other thing I wanted to mention? I just want to talk a little bit about true crime. I find sometimes I'm doing research and lots of things kind of, um, almost in my imagination, they sort of come off the page, and I see. If you've ever watched, Sherlock Holmes, either one of the movies or the TV, series in Britain starring Benedict Cumberbatch, I kind of think in that way, where you sort of visually see things coming together. And I'm always trying to make those connections, and I'm always making those connections. And I see so many people doing the opposite. They grab hold of the word psychopath, and then they see one or two random things, and that's all that they see. Do you know what I'm talking about? I, made the mistake of having a look at some of my I don't do this that often, but I made the mistake of going onto YouTube and looking at some people that I consider, um, not fellow competitors really, but people covering the same content that I'm covering, that sometimes cover the same thing. And this one guy was talking about, um, a demon, psychopath, and a monster in such vacuous terms. It was like, can't you take it any further than the obvious? Um, anyway, so I just, that was something that I thought about. Something else that I thought is really strange is I've been thinking about Titanic and The Great Gatsby, and you have the same actor acting in both of them. You have Leonardo DiCaprio acting in Titanic as this character who wants to, kind of in a way, one aspires to be part of the higher classes in a way. And then that same character acts in Gatsby, who also aspires to the wealth and privilege of Daisy across the bay. it's a very weird similarity, bridged by the same character in two different stories, right? I just thought that that was really strange. And then the last thing I want to share, um, when I was reading this excellent New York Times article, let me just bring that picture up, extract up. Is it this one? No. I think it's this one. So I meant to bring this up in my last episode where she says, um, quoting this guy, if sadistic is watching people go through hoops over and over without much reason, then it was sadistic. And I was just thinking about the situation I'm living in here in South Africa, where if I want to install security cameras in my unit, then I must ask my dad, who owns the place, and then he says, no, you must ask the chairman of the complex. And then the chairman of the complex says, no, you must ask the property management company. And the property management company says, well, we must get permission from your father. And then ultimately, I get told that the chairman has heard from the trustees who say that I do have permission, but I must ask him where I must put them. So, in other words, I'm paying out of my own money to put security cameras up, but they're going to tell me where I must put it, right? So I'm kind of doing a favor to this complex, but they're going to tell me where and what and how and how I must do this, right? And so I couldn't help when I read this line thinking about them, right? Thinking about these people, and just look at this. Just listen to it in that context. If sadistic is watching people go through hoops over and over without much reason, then it is sadistic. And, so I couldn't help thinking, you think about a serial killer as sadistic, right? You think about the crimes of a serial killer as sadism, but there are sadists right around us. And I'm just giving an example of that. Someone who is taking sadistic pleasure in getting me to jump through all of these hoops, right? Right? I'm just saying a sadist isn't just a serial killer. And someone was saying, I can't think of normal people who are sadists or where there's sadism. Well, you watch a sports game where the team you don't support make a silly mistake, and you hear people laugh and cheer and jeer and all of that kind of thing. There's sadism all around us. But I was particularly, I can give you a lot more examples of this, the hoops that I've got to jump through, right? But I think you've also got to have a sense of humor about it. It's true and it's life, but it's also, you can also not want to slit your wrists over it. So I want to share something else that is quite funny. And again, when I saw this, I couldn't help thinking of my situation. And I'm sharing it with you to partially explain my situation and partly to show you how I'm trying to kind of think about it and how I'm responding to it. Okay, so let me know if you can hear the audio when I play this.
Ventura.
You hear the audio.
Yes, Satan? Oh, I'm sorry, sir. You sounded like someone else.
Let me play that again.
Period leaks cutting off your sleep. More than half of women in South Africa.
Wow, I don't know why that is coming up. Let's try that again. Um, Okay, so let's play that again. It's really, really short. It's actually not the one that I wanted to play. There's a longer one that I wanted to play.
Ventura. Yes, Satan? Ventura.
Okay, I don't know what's going on with this particular video. It's not actually the one that I want to play. See if I can find it. It's a bit longer. I think it's this one.
Ventura.
Okay, let's put it on. I couldn't help looking at that and just getting this feeling of, I mean, I haven't ever missed my rent. I pay my rent. I have been told at one point that my rent was going to go up 17% or something, and then I was like, oh, that's interesting. What's this about? Oh, sorry, it's a typo. Then I was told that I owed this huge electricity bill, and I said, oh, what's that about? And it was, oh no, sorry, that was a mistake as well. So on the one hand, I would have jumped through all of these hoops. On the other hand, it's like, you owe us money, and it turns out that actually I don't. So anyway, so you kind of got this ogre for a landlord in this particular movie, and he's just suspicious. He can't what's the word? He can't see anything good about his tenant in this particular skit, right? So there where he says, go ahead, snoop around, he's acknowledging what he knows the landlord wants to do. He knows the landlord wants to snoop around, spy on him, figure out what he's doing. Like, what are you doing in there? You know, like, what is going on? Like you must be up to something no good, right? And I mean, I've been going through that as well, where I've been threatened quite a few times. We're going to get rid of your dog, blah, blah, blah. And so you kind of have the same thing here. Don't let me catch you with an animal in there, right? And I have since gotten permission. So I got my dog during COVID, but I didn't ask if I could get the dog. I just got the dog. And then I was told at a certain point, did you ever ask permission to get the dog? Because if you haven't, then we can get rid of your dog. So then I wrote, again, jump through hoops, sadism. So then I wrote a letter, and then they said, okay, we give you permission to have the dog, kind of thing. But then I was told, you know, if we catch you with your dog and your dog's not on a leash, we can get rid of your dog. Or if someone complains about the barking, we can get rid of your dog. And the joke is that the complex that I stay in borders on like a dog walking field. In other words, almost every evening, the dogs like that run around on that field bark. But those dogs don't matter. It's the dog in your house matters, right? Just saying, it's once again a sadistic attitude, which is, for the lack of a better word, evil. It's evil people in your midst. But this is, to me, the same sentiment I feel at the end of the scene. Just watch here.
Bye-bye, then.
Loser.
Yeah. So, you know, it's like this weird thing. A lot of you guys are aware of how hard I work and how much I care about my dog. And the only thing that these people around me can think about is, how can we get rid of your dog, and what is wrong with like, how can we find some way to undermine what you're doing? It's like, I'm paying my rent, and I'd like to have, I live by myself, I'd like to have a dog for company. And the only thing that they can think of are ways to sort of attack that, undermine that, and be sadistic about it. And I don't know, it just makes you sort of wonder. It makes me wonder, what am I still doing here? I don't know. Why am I still here? What is the advantage in the first place to be living here? No, he doesn't have a pet. He doesn't have a pet. So I just wanted to share that with you. It's just a little bit of an insight into the psychodrama that I've been having to go through. Right now, I'm awake and I work right through the night. And that's in a way so that I don't have to deal with that and those people in the day. But it's not really ideal. It's not really the ideal way to live somewhere where you, in a weird way, almost hiding in your home, right? There's a lot worse. There's a lot worse stuff going on. But anyway, I just thought I would share that with you guys. What else did I want to? Yeah, so that's basically it. I'm probably not going to be doing Van Gogh letters on Wednesday, but I'll probably do the next one on Sunday, just because we are starting to move through the timeline very quickly now, and I just sort of feel like I wanted to get to the Gauguin part, and now we are there, and just allow it to sink in a little bit. So that's kind of what I'm thinking about. It's difficult to move when you've just put solar on your roof. The solar costs $10,000. It's difficult to move when you've spent especially during COVID, I spent quite a bit turning this place into my home. So that makes it a little bit difficult to do. And I think that's also what they're aware of. They're aware of that, and so they feel like they can sort of, I don't know, I just can't tell you how sadistic it is. It really is sadistic. Mickey says, I love Sunday. Anyway, what else is there to say? I'll try to finish the book 2, The Murder of Vincent van Gogh. I'm glad that you're reading it. I hope you're finding it good. Where are you in terms of that book? I definitely wouldn't move back home with my dad. I definitely wouldn't do that. Let's have a look at The Murder of Vincent van Gogh, just see if we're at review number 40. No, we're still not. So for those interested, if you're watching this on replay, this is my book, The Murder of Vincent van Gogh. It's also available in paperback. The advantage of the Kindle version is that there are hyperlinks to a lot of content. If I'm talking about a picture, hyperlinks to a picture, there are a lot of articles and even videos, so check that out. Okay, just a final thing. Our thoughts are with Yvonne Phillips. Snowline, we've missed you here. I hope you're doing okay as well. Can I narrate The Murder of Vincent van Gogh for Audible? To be honest, I wanted to do the Audible thing, and then I just found out that it was going to be quite difficult. You needed a certain degree of sound equipment, and you needed to tick a couple of boxes in terms of ambient noise and that sort of thing. And then when I was going to do audiobooks, people said, you know, and I was going to hire narrators. People said, no, we want you to narrate it. And I kind of gave quite a lot of excuses, and I said, why don't you just record it and post it onto YouTube and put that on Patreon? And ultimately, I've ended up recording just on normal recording equipment, so it's not available on my 21, 22 audiobooks aren't available anywhere on Audible. As I said, just because there was quite a lot of difficulty and cost involved. And so I do want to at some point do the audiobook version of The Murder of Vincent van Gogh. But I just, my voice is constantly being called into service for YouTube videos, and I just don't have enough left after that to also narrate audiobooks. When I'm like, and just in terms of that, I'm not going to be as active on YouTube in August as I was in July. Not that I'm retiring, but I will definitely take my foot off the gas a lot in August. June and July were purposefully very, very busy months. August will be less busy, and then I might visit America again in mid-September to the first week of October. We'll see. So, like, the plan is to work quite hard on YouTube for 1 or 2 months or 3 at a time, and then take 1 month either off or just do different work in the 4th month. That's kind of done. That's kind of done on purpose. I've also got to, for my health, right now I weigh 106 kilograms. When I came to South Africa from America, I haven't been able to adjust to the winter. It's been a colder winter than usual. And I just haven't been, I've done a little bit of walking on the treadmill, walking my dog, riding on my spin bike indoors. I've done a little bit of that, but I'm actually the fattest I've ever been. I actually came back from America weighing like 102, 103, and I quickly put on another 3 kilograms. So August, I do want to train and get back into definitely fitter shape than I've been in. Great time of year in America. I'd love to see the red vineyards and the seasons change in America. I also don't laugh, but I've also got a very crazy idea that in next year, in 2024, I don't know whether I'm doing it. I'm just got the idea in my mind, but of flying to Nepal and hiking around Annapurna. I will obviously need to be fitter, and my knee needs to be stronger for that. And then going from Nepal to South Korea, I lived there for a while, just for a couple of days. And then from South Korea to Hawaii, and then from Hawaii to LA, and then maybe going to the Sequoia Forest, and again visiting my friend Webb and Lisa and Star in California, and then basically coming back the same way, or coming back via New York, whatever. We'll see. But yeah, I'm definitely thinking about that as a different thing, something different to do in 2024. So we'll see if that happens. Yeah, we'll see. Anyway, if you guys watch Oppenheimer, I'll be interested to see what you guys think about it. I was in general a little bit disappointed. Some of the acting was good, some of the moments were good, but definitely not Nolan at his best. Also hope it happens. Okay, guys, that's it from me. Enjoy the rest of your Sunday night. Stephanie H, we missed you. SM Kovalinsky, I'm not sure where you are, but thanks a lot for the super chats, especially the one from who was it? Was it Helena? I don't know. There was one that was really from Karen Sanderson. Thank you so much for that. I really appreciate it. Okay, so I'll see you guys next Sunday for Van Gogh Letters 48. Sorry, 68. Sorry, my mind's in the somewhere else. Sounds good. Okay, Chelsea, happy reading in the meantime. Take care, guys. I'll try and survive on my side of the world. I'm sure we've all got our little dramas. And I hope you guys have a good week coming up. Stay cool. Okay, cheers, guys. Can't believe Timmy hasn't made an appearance. Maybe we should call Timmy. Timmy, come. I've got a feeling he's like completely fast asleep. Timmy, come. Come, boy. Hey. Hey, come here. Timmy, come. Timmy, come. You want to go for a walk? Come, boy. Timmy, come. There, I heard him jump off the bed. Come. Come, boy. This little guy's gotten me into so much trouble, but it's on the other people, not so much on him. Hey, boy, looking quite handsome. Hey. Okay. Anyway, there's Timmy. Timmy says bye, and we'll see you guys next time. Take care. Hey, boy. You go, dog. Are you a bad boy? Okay, cheers, guys. Bye, Ralph. Take care.